we are introduced to James, along with Olivia and his co-worker. They reach the barren city to find their daughter. As a worker breaks the statue leading to the creepy dungeon, Olivia starts to have second thoughts. She finds James's plan crazy, but James continues to go inside by assuring Olivia that she has nothing to fear as long as she is with him. The inside of the dungeon is dark and scary, with skulls and bones lying around. Finally, James finds the old book that can bring his daughter back and goes through its pages. Just as the worker asks James for his pay, he shoots him directly in the chest. Olivia is shocked by James's behavior. He then asks her to lie on the wooden bed as he continues to read what is written in the book in a foreign language. As he continues to summon evil through his loud chanting, Olivia retaliates and asks him to stop. She warns him that this book opens the gates to darkness. Surprisingly, he orders Olivia to perish in order to raise an eternal life. But just as he voices his intention, a huge rock falls on him. The whole place starts to fall apart. Olivia grabs the book and rushes out, leaving James lying under a rock. That is when Olivia opens her eyes, coming back to reality. She sees the doctor standing in front of her and she tells him about her dreadful dream of the book. The doctor asks her about the importance of the book. She replies that the book cannot just bring back the deceased, but also darkness along with it, which stays forever. However, she is worried about her stolen book and fears that it's in the hands of someone who has full knowledge of the hell beneath it. Meanwhile, in a town, a man with a beard is walking freely when a little boy starts begging him for money. That is when he hears two men talking about a beautiful deceased girl who was murdered with her lips sewn together. The man indulges with those two men by blaming the act of murder on a gang named Vladimirsk. Just as one of the men comes near him, he sees his fake beard and takes it off with loud laughter. This is when all the men start fighting. And just as the fight becomes intense, a man in the police uniform fires in the air. Everyone starts running in reaction, except the man with the fake beard. The police officer's name is Gannon. And it turns out that the man in the beard, Sergei Rostov, is a criminal investigator working with the police. Gannon updates him about the fourth murder and tells him to avoid operative work as it doesn't suit his skills and abilities. Both of them reach the crime scene, where people are already gathered, and they walk towards the body. A man in his late 40s is standing alongside the body and examining it when Sergei and Gannon reach him. He briefs them about the sharp blade that was used to open the chest of the poor victim. That is when he finds a black folded cloth inside the victim and hands it to Sergei. Shockingly, inside the cloth is an egg with a pentagon-type symbol embossed on it. Sergei asks Gannon to find him someone who can explain the meaning of the symbol. Sergei and Gannon are now in a huge hall, with many antiques and artifacts lying around. The expert they took the egg to admits that the symbol is of a pentagram, and to his knowledge, they are not evil and bring no harm. However, they serve as protection against all kinds of evil. Sergei continues to examine the place and inquires about the poster on the wall, which has the same symbol as the egg. Sergei expresses his interest in attending the show on the poster and having a seat with the full view of the audience. He ends up at the show where the hall is full of people who are sitting across from each other and adoring a girl in a black dress. The girl in the black is Olivia Reed, who is now playing with fire in her hands. Meanwhile, Gannon continues to show his excitement with Sergei, which is becoming distracting for the audience. With the amount of chatter in the hall, Olivia demands silence from the audience, as according to her, there are spirits amongst them. Sergei continues to argue with Olivia and her companion, Golitsyn, and that is when Olivia senses that Sergei wronged a woman in his life. They have a brief argument, after which Olivia walks into the middle of the 5 lamps. She announces that now the shadows of those spirits will appear, ones who are important to the people in the audience. Having said that, she splashes the end of her dress, causing all the 5 lamps to be lit, forming a pentagram with fire. She assures the people that they are safe with the help of her pentagram. And at the count of 3, a light forms at the roof of the hall, showing the shadows of the deceased people. After the show, Gannon shares with Sergei that he saw his deceased mom whom he had wronged, and insists he tell whom he saw. Olivia, along with Golitsyn, travels to her place when he asks her about the reason for her stay in St. Petersburg. She responds, stating her intentions to earn from more shows here. The moment Golitsyn leaves the carriage, Sergei hops in, introducing himself as the police. Olivia directs him to find her priceless book, which has been stolen. Sergei continues to interrogate her about the egg, which has the same pentagram symbol. She denies knowing anything about this, and he leaves her angrily. On their way back, Sergei asks Gannon to keep an eye on Olivia. With that, Gannon introduces a young man as an agent named Gopher to Sergei. Gannon interrogates Gopher about the killer, to which Gopher scarily informs them that this is the work of the devil who is slaying innocent people in this town. Then, he continues demanding money upfront. Meanwhile, a young girl is playing with the keys of the piano when Golitsyn comes and hands her an amount of money. She declares that the business he is involved in is not good, and she cleverly advises him that it won't end well if others get to know about it. Upon hearing this, the man gives her more money to keep her silent. She leaves the house and starts brisk walking on the empty roads to avoid getting caught. Suddenly, a man in a hood grabs and suffocates her, which makes her faint. The girl is then carried and tied to a chair. Meanwhile, the man in the hood goes through the pages of the dark book. He stops at the page where there is a picture of a girl whose eyes are burned out. He grabs a piece of burning metal in his hand and harshly places it on the neck of the girl, making her scream in pain. Gannon walks across the office while receiving greetings from his fellow officers, and he enters Sergey's room where he finds him sleeping on his desk. He wakes him up by giving him good news about a widow witness, who while enjoying her lunch saw a man carry a girl in a black carriage. According to the witness, the man was wearing warm clothes and his face was covered, so she was not able to tell his appearance. Gavin continues, stating the woman reported that the carriage was driving strangely. After hearing him out, Sergey questions Gannon about Olivia, and whether she will be able to help them summon the deceased people's souls. That is when Sergey's gaze falls to the map below him and he draws a line on it, forming a pentagon. The line reaches the end of the town of Kazan Cathedral. This makes both Gannon and Sergey realize that the next victim of the killer will be in this town. Just as they are about to leave in a hurry, an officer comes and gives them the news of the fifth victim in Kazan Cathedral. The location of the body is on the staircase of the nearby river. Upon their arrival, the examiner redirects their attention to a mark on the girl's chest. The lifeless body of the girl lies on the stairs. The people surrounding the scene continue to pity the poor girl and gossip ensues. On their way, Gavin becomes curious about why Sergey never carries a gun with him. Sergey sarcastically assures him that he doesn't plan on shooting someone. Olivia opens her door and finds Sergey standing outside. She implores him to do something about her book, but he ignores her request and breaks the news of another murder to her. Uninvited, he enters her house and pleads with her to help him. He displays the mystical things in front of her, so she can tell him about the owners of the possessions. Unfortunately, she can't help him, but he hands her a ring and wants to know if she can feel something. Eventually, she agrees to help him, but on a fixed payment of 200 rubles. While Sergey is with Olivia, Gannon meets a cartwright and shows him the drawing of that strange cart. The cartwright assures Gannon that he has never made a cart like that before. Olivia and Sergey sit across from each other on a table and place the ring in the center. Before starting the hearse, Olivia clarifies to Sergey that she can only see what the non-living want her to see, and that can be the moments of demise. They both hold the table tightly, while Olivia summons the owner of the ring, and with that, the table starts to tremble. With her eyes closed, Olivia begins narrating the moments of the demise of the girl, and how alone she was in a dark street where out of nowhere she was seduced and strangled by an average man with brown hair. Sergey intervenes and stops her, calling her a liar and that the ring belongs to his wife. He discovers the questionable substances on her table and accuses her of fooling her audience by using illicit tricks. Nevertheless, she continues to deny his allegations. He directs her to collect her things and follow him to the morgue, but she pleads with him to give her another chance and even promises to find the murderer. Sergey leads her inside the morgue, where the bodies of the 6 victims are placed. Then, he introduces them to her, explaining the brutality of their murders simultaneously. He harshly prompts her to talk to these deceased people, and she is compelled to question why he is so desperate. The man in the hood turns the pages of the book to the 6th page. Then, he brands the girl in his captivity, despite her agonizing screams. Olivia is inside the lockup when she starts seeing the deceased girl floating in the water. She is sitting back in shock when she realizes that her nose is bleeding. She calls out to an officer and makes him take her to Sergey. Gannon examines Olivia and states her condition as a nervous spasm. Olivia sits down and appeals to Sergey to listen to the vision that she had in the cell. Skeptical of her, Sergey continues to think of this as another way for her to make money. She starts describing how she saw herself drowning in the water, along with specific details of her physical appearance and whereabouts. The girl appeared traumatized out of fear and in deep pain, after which she perished. Olivia recalls the emotions of the girl, but Sergey puts a stop to this and lets her go. Olivia leaves the station hastily with a strange smile on her face. It is a sunny day when Olivia walks across the streets and reaches the side of the river where she sees the reflection of the deceased girl again in the water. Gannon checks up on her. Sergey, on the other hand, is still not accepting of her. He demands to know how she managed to reach the location accurately when she is not aware of the city, and if she would like to visit the autopsy, or if she already knows what happened to the girl. Without thinking, she updates him about the triangle, which is another symbol of the ritual performed on these poor girls. She adds that all the victims have one destination, which is hell. She is dreading that if hell comes, there will be no people left. With that being said, Sergey faces her and claims that he still does not believe her. He holds her shoulders and exclaims that he is sick of her lies. This is when Olivia gets another vision, in which the man in the hood sets the deceased girl on the stairs and she faints in Sergey's arms. She comes back to reality and immediately demands for a pen and paper. Drawing a circle on the paper, she states that the deceased girl in her vision was sitting in the embankment, which a carriage brought her to, and that the man had a tattoo on his hand, which is the same one she drew on the paper. Upon seeing the tattoo, Gannon reminds Sergey that it is Pavlusha, the deceased man's tattoo, who lives near the victim. But he can't understand why he would do such horrendous murders in his city, which requires skills in sewing and cut. The bar is crowded with men when Sergey enters. He spots Gopher eating and sits with him to recruit his help in finding Pavlusha, the deceased man. Gopher suggests that he should leave this place. Another man in the bar starts scratching the tattoo on his hand, when his associate distracts him and alerts him of Gopher being grilled by the police. Gopher begs Rostov to leave, or they will end him. Coincidentally, a man appears and instructs Gopher to go to the kitchen, where he is needed by Pavlusha. Sergei intends to follow Gopher, but the man stops him. Meanwhile, inside the kitchen, Pavlusha throws burning hot water on Gopher. He grabs his head and sinks it inside the hot boiler. Outside, Sergei is in an altercation with the guard and his associates, who all work for Pavlusha. That's when Gannon comes to the rescue and shoots 2 of the men, which finally makes the others back off. Sergei enters the kitchen and asks for the deceased man. In return, Pavlusha throws Gopher, who is now lifeless, on him. Pavlusha makes his move to escape and flees from the bar, but Sergei speeds up in his pursuit. Their struggle continues as they fight with bricks. Pavlusha destroys the lift on which Sergei was standing, which makes him believe that he already ended Sergei. But Sergei outsmarts him by saving himself, and he gets a hold of Pavlusha. He eventually interrogates him about the deceased girls. Pavlusha denies these allegations and claims that he saw the murderer himself. Pavlusha elaborates that one night at Kazan Cathedral, he was walking when he saw a man carrying a girl. He had noticed that the girl was blue. He wanted to teach the man a lesson, so he walked up to him and pickpocketed his watch. That was when he caught a glimpse of the poor girl and how badly she was murdered by that monster. Sergei wants Pavlusha to lead him to the watch, but before he can get an answer, a bullet passes through Pavlusha's chest. Gannon fired this shot. Sergei gets angry at Gannon as Pavlusha could have been used as a witness, but Gannon thinks it was justified to slay a man like Pavlusha. Both Sergei and Gannon take the watch to the shopkeeper, hoping to find out who the previous owner is. The shopkeeper is amazed when he opens the watch and some music starts to play. This is because the watch played no music when he initially sold it. Sergei doesn't have the time or interest to entertain his observations, so he cuts to the chase, wanting to narrow down the identity of the owner of this watch. Sergei and Gannon find themselves in the same hall again, where they run into Golitsyn. He wonders why Sergei and Gannon returned here and discovers them holding his watch. On Sergei's orders, Gannon opens the gate and lets a few officers in, who start to search Golitsyn's house. Golitsyn protests against the trespassing in his place, but the officers continue to search around. An officer opens a cabinet and finds a few daggers and clothes stained with blood. He calls out for Sergei, whose suspicions start to deepen as he starts interrogating Golitsyn. But Golitsyn insists he has not murdered anyone and owes them no explanation, which gets him arrested. Sergei walks inside the dark area of Olivia's prison. She curses him as soon as she sees him, wishing for him to stay alone forever and experience a miserable, painful end. Unaffected, he commands her to be a witness against Golitsyn, whom he suspects to be the murderer of the poor girls. In the other room, Golitsyn blabbers to Gannon about how famous and powerful he wants to become since he learns from the best master. Olivia is still in shock as she discovers that Golitsyn is the one who has her book, even though Sergei hasn't found her book yet. She remembers now that she used to give Golitsyn lessons from her book in Moscow. On the other hand, Golitsyn doesn't give up and insists that he didn't slay anyone. He does, however, confess to doing rituals on Sergei walks inside the room where Golitsyn and Gannon are. He grants freedom to this insane suspect because he has arrived at the conclusion that Golitsyn isn't the murderer. This is equally shocking for both Gannon and Olivia. Sergei explains that Golitsyn has an alibi, as he was in Moscow with Olivia when the first murder occurred. He also questions Golitsyn as to why the murderer had his watch, and learns that Golitsyn knew one of the criminals, Avdiya, who helped him make his garments for the rituals. Golitsyn had given Avdiya his watch as hush money. As he is about to leave, Golitsyn eyes Olivia, disappointed in her lack of trust in him. He sees no possibility of them performing now. As Olivia walks outside the station, Sergei accompanies her and thinks out loud about why the murderer slayed 6 girls and not 5, just according to the pattern of the pentagon. Olivia's guess is that the pentagon is complete, but the rituals still require 4 more sacrifices and that the 6th one is water. Olivia is sure that the murderer won't rest until his 9th victim, and she knows exactly how and where the 9th murder will take place. Finally, Olivia breaks the news to him that she will be the 9th victim. Sergei takes responsibility for her safety himself and promises to look out for her. Back at her home, she serves him tea while he asks the purpose of her playing false tricks on people. Olivia admits that she does it because it makes her feel important and seen. She confides in him about how her father used to admire her God-given gift as a way to make money and how he married her for his benefit, but she loved her father, or husband, sincerely. Back then, if she failed at any rehearsal, he would hit her, but she always managed to forgive him for the sake of their daughter, Audrey, who later got ill and perished. Time passed and she never stopped working to make money. A girl tied to the bed, covered with white sheets, cries for mercy while the man in the hood shifts pages of the book and steps towards the girl. He stuffs her mouth with a cloth as she begs for help. Simultaneously, Olivia opens up to Sergei about the moment when she lost her true self. She moves closer to Sergei and claims that it's okay to make a decision, instead of regretting it. Sergei's guilt is palpable. He never told anyone and still blames himself for what happened. Olivia makes him open his eyes, teaching him that he joined the police force and continued to take the blame onto himself, which is something he shouldn't have done. Out of nowhere, Olivia encounters a vision with crosses. She can sense demise, and also she is in water. Further clarifications from her give Sergei an idea about the next location. The more horrific her vision gets, the more Olivia believes the girl in her vision is still alive. They reach the old cemetery with birds cawing everywhere. Rushing towards the barren land, they start digging quickly. Olivia walks away as she feels nauseated. Sergi continues to dig, when all of a sudden, a face of a boy appears and spits blood right on his face, and then faints. He looks back and finds Olivia missing. So he starts calling out her name and running around, when he sees a man carrying Olivia in a carriage. Luckily, Sergi manages to climb the carriage in time. Gannon enters a place where men are busy making parts of a carriage. He then shows a man the strange carriage, and questions if he ever repaired one like it. Sergi jumps high up on the carriage, managing to reach Olivia, who is lying inside. The man acknowledges that he has repaired parts of it, and shows Gannon the receipt of this transaction. Sergi struggles on the carriage, and his fight with the driver gets worse. The driver hits him so hard that he ends up on the ground, and then the carriage is long gone. Olivia wakes up in a smelly, rotten dungeon. She looks around and notices her book lying nearby. She runs towards it, but finds her feet chained. Gannon walks across the shady area. Olivia manages to unlock herself, and starts finding means to escape when she hears heavy footsteps coming towards her. She tries to escape, but the man in the hood catches her. Gannon finds the carriage and gets close to it when a man sees him. Before Gannon can do anything, the man starts whipping him and is about to strangle Gannon to his demise when a bullet pierces his body. Gannon then enters the old house and sees Olivia tied up. He starts unshackling her when she starts screaming. Sergi moves with his troop of officers towards the house, but stops when he sees Gannon's body. He and his team steps inside the creepy house and roams around. When he comes across the deceased body of a girl in the tub, he walks further and discovers Olivia's book, in which he finds a paper mentioning fireworks on the 20th. There are fireworks everywhere when Olivia opens her eyes and sees herself tied. She cries for help when the man removes his hood, revealing himself to be James, who had survived after all. He is determined to bring their daughter back to life. Olivia tries to reason with him that the deceased cannot be brought back. Sergi rides on his horse as fast as he can, and reaches the location of the fireworks. Just as James is about to burn Olivia in the fire, Sergi makes it in time and shoots him. James's body catches fire. The young girl in the tub suddenly wakes up. Sergi jumps into the fire to save Olivia, and walks away by taking her into his arms, fulfilling his promise.